Okay, quick sound check for you. All right, so I've heard your name pronounced a bazillion different ways.
Do you want this? I leaned forward. Do you want me to just pull this forward or no? Like that?
Yeah, that's all good. Everything's good. Can you settle the score? How do you pronounce your name? Because I've told people that I'm talking to you, and I've heard 8 different pronunciations.
Well, Deaglan is pretty simple. It's not Deaglan, it's Deaglan. And I had that confirmed. My brother went to Deaglan, like night and day in Glen. And then McEachern, we're still settling that score in my family. So it's McEachern, McEachern, McEachern. My dad ran for governor, and so he said McEachern for governor. So I don't know.
So we still don't have a definitive answer.
Not on that. There's, pick your poison on McEachern, but I usually go with McEachern. So
Deaglan McEachern.
That's it.
Okay, let's roll with that. You look great, sound great. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome to Seacoast Stories, a podcast about the people, businesses, and newsmakers that make the Seacoast an American hidden gem. I'm Trey Farkas, and on today's episode, how Deaglan McEachern met his wife in a New York City bar, why he wore an eye patch as a child, that time he almost competed in the Olympics, and what he hopes his legacy as Portsmouth mayor will be. An honor to be in not the mayor's office. We were originally in the mayor's office, but we've had to be
there's ghosts
adjusted.
Yeah, sure, there's ghosts.
The ghosts of Portsmouth and mayors past have come to haunt Seacoast Stories. But we are here today, and there's a bazillion different directions we could go. And thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. Last Sunday, on the day that we're speaking, I witnessed a viral moment in New Hampshire history. I was at the Seafood Festival in Hampton Beach, and I witnessed
the governor
giving the Heimlich. And I'm just wondering, do you have that in your arsenal? If you were needed to spur into action at a lobster roll eating contest, could you administer the Heimlich?
I can administer the Heimlich. I haven't had to do that. I think ever in my life. Good on the governor for jumping in on that. I think sometimes in a crowd, people can be blinded just by watching, but he wasn't. And, and good on the contestant who just jumped right back into it. He's like, I'm going to finish this. And when you sign up for a lobster roll eating contest, there must be some entry fee that you're paying because lobster rolls are not cheap. And so for him to go in and be like, I'm finishing this as soon as it got off, I think I might have taken a break, from eating lobster rolls. But yeah, good on the governor seeing you see something, you say something, maybe you administer the Heimlich. So he did that, and I'm happy that it all was well, that ends well down at that competition. I don't think he won though. I think
he did not win. Yeah. And to your point, I didn't even see this happen. I was there front and center, but my eyes were just on the other side.
Oh, you were there.
I was there.
Yeah.
I witnessed this.
Yeah.
But I was watching the leader and was throwing up in my mouth watching this happen.
I think that it's always when you're scanning a crowd, it's like lifeguards have some of the hardest jobs because it can happen right in front of you. But the governor is always on watch, always on duty, and so he was able to jump in. So
yes,
good for Governor Sununu.
I'm not that interested in talking to you today about the inner workings of Portsmouth politics. This podcast mainly is just about people and getting to know people.
I think that would be a very boring podcast.
Exactly. Okay. I think most people I'm glad you said it and not me. I want to get to know the people. And so commonality that we have, I studied U.S. history in college. That was my major.
Oh, yeah. Me too.
You graduated from Cal with a history major and then Cambridge, England, also with a master's in history. Yep. Why did you want to study history?
I just liked reading. There's so many things you learn outside of your major in college, time management, all those things. But for me, just understanding what it is that has gone before us. There's all those cliches about history rhyming, that happens, I'm sure. But it's humanity. And there's some commonalities that exist in humanity. We have react to certain stimuli the same. And just seeing that if you're a curious person, reading about other people, at page 6, or People magazine, there's a lot. And I think I got to do it in 2 very unique places at Cal, where the atomic bomb was invented, that's a interesting place. It's a living history there, and just California and seeing another part of America. And then going over to England and being able to study early British political history. It's not for everybody, but Harry Truman said it, the best books to read are the history you haven't read. And so understanding that and getting to see that there's a lot that changes, with their circumstance, but a lot is still, it's people, don't change that much. And so seeing how we react to situations is always the most interesting.
What exactly were you planning to do with that history degree?
I was going to be a lawyer like everybody else in my family. I thought, okay, I'll do this and then I'll go to law school. And then I became a rower. And that just kind of threw everything, not off because I enjoyed it, but I just pursued that dream. And then, I met my wife in a bar in the Lower East Side of Manhattan when I was out there rowing, and just didn't find time for law school. I found ways to argue, instead, but it's no, I was planning on doing that, and just curiosity led in a different direction. Started working in tech after all that, and just didn't ever make it back to law school. Though sometimes the legal department here or in my actual job, they're like, okay, Google is not a law degree, Deaglan.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of work that goes into this.
And I want to talk about that 10-year rowing thing in a moment, but first, got to stick with the history. What's your favorite period of history all time to study?
Oh, I have actually not even thought of that. So I think the early British political history, where they figured out like that if they could hold the national debt, like, we think of debt as terrible, but debt brought predictability to a country that was raising arms. And so like if you didn't actually have to raise money, instead you're paying down the interest, it allows for different things to happen and different growths to occur. So I thought in terms of like the modern world that we exist in today is in many ways kind of tied back to the idea that like if a government is predictable, it's more efficient and better. And so that was a very interesting, and probably if you ask me tomorrow, I might have a different take, but really enjoyed that just because there's so many parallels in terms of like populism started growing. You had the backbenchers there in Parliament, and it was kind of like the early seeds of like what we think of as modernity here. So today, that's the answer, the long 18th century British political history.
So you obviously have an affinity for British history. Is that why you wanted to go study at Cambridge, a historic university?
Yeah, I mean, partly I wanted to like, as an Irish guy, like with that background, want to see, what the whole big thing was over there. I picked Cambridge because they had cows. New Hampshire has cows, and loved that. The thing that was interesting, like I'll give you a story. Like there was a beam in this very old college. I'm forgetting the name. I think it was Trinity Hall, but like a beam had broke. And so they looked at they had the plans for this like 700-year-old building. And they had accounted for that in the plans so much so that they planted a forest for these beams, just the idea that like nothing changes, so much so that this building will be here in 300 years when you need another timber beam to support this roof, and that you're going to plant a forest that's going to be ready for that. It was just kind of wild. But if I'm honest, I got to be a hired gun to be a rower over there too. So I got to go travel and get to see that part of the world in a lot of ways because, I was doing this weird thing that rowing, that's like if you get injured playing basketball, you pick it up, and so got to go over there and meet a lot of cool people doing that. But really enjoyed England, and there, yeah, it's a lot in common, like that special relationship still exists between the U.S. and the Brits. Like we share a common language, except for like they drink a ton, like at lunch,
Hey, I mean, we can hold our own.
In New Hampshire, maybe, but, for like England, they drink, it's like a couple of casual pints. You're like, wait, this is like 6 Bud Lights, guys. Like this is totally unreasonable for lunch.
Yeah, I lived in London for a bit as well, and in Scotland. So I'm very familiar with the British drinking culture. That's why I left.
Yeah, the lunch beer is, it's tough to keep up sometimes.
Let's talk about the rowing. So I'm curious because you grew up in this area, your family, very politically involved, your dad, your aunt was the mayor at one point, law school aspirations, history degree, and then you chose to go into the rowing. You had all these different angles.
Sure.
How did people feel about this decision at the time?
Well, the thing that it's hard, I think, in anyone's life is to realize all the decisions you're making as an adult before you realize you're an adult. And this was just something like, I wasn't immediately good at rowing when I started, but I immediately saw results from the rowing. Like I saw, okay, like if I put in hard work and maybe if I had done that something else, it would have been different. But I saw the work that I put into rowing and I got addicted to just being able to see like that transform into like a lower ERG score or winning a seat race or making a boat or making a team. And that just like consumed me for a very long time. And I didn't go, like I went to Cal, I got in large part because of rowing, but I wasn't the best recruit there. And I just kept at it, and then eventually became the captain and was really, became strong and did that. But it was just because I put a lot of time into it. So it was never like a conscious decision. I think like when I was making, hundreds of dollars a year, like I think maybe my parents were like, okay, well, like start paying off some of these student loans, D. But like, it was never like, like most decisions, it's not like a conscious thing where you're like, this is my life's dedication. It's just like, this is a passion that I have and I'm going to pursue this passion. And I pursued it until I fell in love with a girl that, it was like earning hundreds of dollars a year has some limitations when you meet a girl in New York and you want to like start a family and do those things. And so rowing was just entirely, it was the most selfish you can possibly be. And I mean that like in I guess a positive way, but like, it's something that like you can't get sick. You got to like focus on what you eat. Like you got to go to bed. And it's like when people say like it takes 100%, I always joke, like laugh when say, oh, it's going to take 110%. 100% is a lot to give to something. It means taking away from a lot of other people. It means not being there for a wedding. It means not being there for a baptism. There's a lot of things that you have to say no to when you commit something to 100%. And so it was that sacrifice that the calculus just stopped being worth it after a while. But there was never anybody, like I was so supported by my family, lived with them. My mom was a manager of the Hilton Garden Inn. She always gave us the employee rate for me and my pair partner at the breakfast, like after training. So there was a lot of people that supported me on that way. So it never felt like throwing anything away. In fact, I'd say like the ability to suffer for something for that long of a period of time has made the tough things that like we've seen, my wife's health or tough conversations you have with kids, like it has made it easier to maybe not overcome, but like contextualize like, okay, this is hard work. I know what this is and I can do this.
In hindsight, does any part of you think you spent too long?
Sure. I mean, I think like because I didn't make it to the Olympics, like I think like a question that, at 2:00 in the morning when I wake up, but like, it wasn't until I had my first job, like my first like real job, like not like working for, it was a natural gas company that gave us all jobs when we were rowers. But I was working for a tech company. I had this boss and he's like, Deg, like, why do you think, like he like came in and fired everybody except like 3 of these inside salespeople. We were called SDRs. You call up businesses, try to get meetings. And I'm like, I'm just happy that you didn't fire me. And he's like, it's because you're an athlete. And I was like, okay. And thinking, he's like, do you know why? And I'm like thinking like perseverance, teamwork, all of those things. And he's like, no, it's because you're used to losing and you keep going. And like as any athlete, I think what you learn in athletics, and maybe I didn't need to have like an extra quadrennial and 4 years doing that, but any athlete learns that like you are trying to be a better version of yourself. And so every day in practice, you lose to that version of yourself that you're not yet. And so it was positive and, I'm super grateful for all the things that are in my life now. So like, I don't know, the butterfly effect, like if I hadn't been rowing, I wouldn't have been meeting my buddy in a Lower East Side bar in Manhattan to, get totally ignored by this girl who gave me a fake name, Nebraska. And, and I fell in love over there. So, I can't really regret the things that got me to the position I'm in because I'm the luckiest guy, at least that I know. I got 2 kids that are just really funny and sweet and awesome and smart and curious and just good natured. And I got a wife that's very more supportive than any man deserves. And so, like I'm playing in the house money now. So like, that I rode for a little bit longer, it was cool. I got to do it. And then I got to grow up, like immediately after.
Well, that makes me so happy to hear that. I'm a sucker for a love story. And I myself, I don't know if you've if you read the articles these days, but dating is hard. And this love story that you just,
came before apps though. Like,
but before the apps. So I'm just curious, like she gave you a fake number.
Yeah, so like, we had talked about this a little bit before, like when you asked me how to pronounce my name. So that's a dead giveaway. Back in the bar scene, dating scene, like if I would go up and I'd be like, hey, my name is Deaglan, and a girl was at all interested, but oh, how do you say that? That was my tell. Like, oh, we might have a conversation here. But she was like, cool, my name's Nebraska. Her name was not Nebraska. It was in my phone as Nebraska for like a whole year after that. She did eventually give me her name because this is New York, like creepers, walking around, and so, was able to, convince her to go on a couple more dates. But the reason why is because I was meeting my friend, and he was really into her friend. And so he just lied to me and said, dude, I think Nebraska's like really into you. And so like, that's how I got the courage to talk to the most beautiful woman that I'd ever met in person, and just kind of just had the confidence that a kid that I had an eye patch named Deaglan, like it wasn't like I had big red glasses as growing up. So like I didn't, not born with all that confidence.
Yeah.
And so my buddy Roy gave me the confidence to keep talking, and, maybe I made her laugh a little bit enough that we could exchange numbers. And it wasn't, I think, until we were talking about like, our favorite songs. And like my favorite song at that time was Possum Kingdom by the Toadies.
Of course.
Great song, Vampires, Texas. And she's like, I'm listening to that right now. So that was actually our wedding song. Like we had a waltz to Possum Kingdom by the Toadies. So it was hard to learn. It was like the 5/4. I don't remember any of like the details, but it was a tough waltz to like try to make happen. And like our aunts and grandmothers are like, why are they listening to a hard rock song, in the middle of this beautiful wedding?
So once you hung up the, I don't know what equipment you wear.
It's the oar.
Once
You
hung up the oar, what was the path then? What did you want to do?
So I was, we had there was a training camp. So my wife, who was working in New York, moved out to San Francisco. And then I started that gig in tech. Knew we'd want to be back on the East Coast. Like we loved California, but like just drawn to family. Hers from Virginia. I'm from up here. And so got back to New York, just worked, opened an office there, was able to try to figure out like how to navigate this. And like I took like an entry-level job at like 27, but like you get to, there is like some experience you have to that in terms of like just knowing people and like interacting and able to move through that. So I was lucky to skip a couple of steps in that. And then just started working in tech on the account exec sales side eventually, and knew that at one point we'd want to come, but we didn't actually decide to move back here until my wife got really sick. She had an autoimmune thing and could not afford the rent in New York without her working. And so my aunt, who was the mayor, was like, hey, I have a winter rental. You can come, do month to month here. You're still going to pay full price because we got a big family. And if she starts giving discounts, that's the end of her being able to pay her property tax. So that's how we ended up back here, because we were just trying to figure out like what was going to go on with my wife. And that was it's a pretty scary time, I'd say, but like we got through that, and she's a lot better now. I found that it's like a more mild form of lupus. And so she's been able to navigate that. She's a tough son of a bitch. Like there were days that were just not good days. And she was really tough. And I think that we moved back here just because, we were thinking about this or moving to upstate New York. And this was to be closer to family and opportunities, for both of us eventually. But we just didn't know if she was going to get that chance to have that. Luckily, she's feeling a lot better, and we're very blessed for her health. But that was kind of like how we ended up back here, and still doing, sales stuff and, managed or moved away from that, depending on how much this gig over here takes up with my time.
Well, I'm very happy to hear that she's doing better, and I'm so sorry that you guys had to go through that. Can't imagine how emotionally taxing
it's
that
tough.
was.
And then like insurance, making sure, you go through that. Like, so that was the tough part. Just like had insurance, luckily, but like even navigating, even when you have insurance and you get like a bill for like, $15,000, and you're like waiting for insurance to like kick in and pay that. And you have all those, it's just the fear of that. And then like, when like something like slips through the cracks and it goes to collections and ruins your credit for like 6 years, like that's a bummer too. So it's just not easy to be sick. And I think a lot of times we take for granted, like my wife and I, last night, we had voting yesterday. And so the kids are out of school, and we were hoping that the kids were going to sleep in, and they didn't. They just got up way early. They were already tired going into it, but it was not a school day. So of course their internal clock gets set to like 5 a.m. And so my wife was like a little frustrated, I think, because I left, lights on in the bathroom, and maybe that was the reason why they woke up. Wasn't the reason, but any ability to kind of bring calm to chaos. So she didn't stay up for the debate. I, of course, watched the debate, and she just, texted me like, "Hey, love you." Like it was it was a tired day. And I was like, "Yeah, I love you too." And so I think because we've gone through maybe times that were tougher earlier on, we figured out that like, tomorrow is not a guarantee that we're going to have. And so trying to make sure that we're at least letting each other know that we do appreciate and love each other. I think that's, one of the, not silver linings because it was hell to go through, but like one of the things that we're not going to take, for granted is each other and our family.
That's amazing. I last summer was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes out of nowhere.
Oh my God. I'm so sorry. Jeez.
Yeah, I'm better suited for dealing with it the most. I already do all the right things, but it just very much put into perspective health and just the insurance complications of it all.
My God. Yeah. Yeah. The autoimmune stuff, which is like, I'm super hopeful about like the future. Like I had a lazy eye as a kid. And when my daughter like started having the lazy eye, like went to the doctor and like they were able to fix it through I thought I got verklempt when I thought, she's going to have an eye patch because I remember this eye patch. It sucked. I got stickers to put on it that did not make up for like how tough that eye patch was. You're like not a pirate, or like maybe on Halloween it's cool, but like the rest of the time.
And how long did you wear this eye patch for?
For like 2 years, on and off, and trying to and it's tough. Like you tell a kid who's like 7 that they have a lazy eye, it's like, okay, it's capable of doing the work and chooses not to, and we're going to put a patch on the other one, but. The point was the advances that happened. Like it will be easier for my daughter. Like hopefully in our lifetime, we will, it's like here in Portsmouth, like Vertex, is a company that's right next to Lonza. They are going to manufacture the cell therapy for type 1 diabetes. Like that's a really cool thing to give people, that freedom back. I remember Sam Fold, awesome baseball player. Like you should interview.
I remember him.
You should interview Sam Fold in some way. He now I think is like the general manager for the Phillies.
Okay.
His mom is a professor at UNH, but he had type 1 diabetes, and so like there's just a lot that goes into, and everybody has a challenge, and we don't always recognize the challenge that everybody. So being patient, with folks, because you don't always know what they're going through. And sometimes it's just like trying to get from under some, insane medical bills as they're like, that process is tough.
Yeah.
And we don't make it easy in this country.
Coming up, the best and worst parts of holding office and why Deaglan wants you to pay more rent than you already do. Stay with us. This is Seacoast Stories. Hey everyone, it's Troy. The other day, I was planning out the podcast for the rest of 2024. I've got nearly every Monday booked, and I'm really excited for you all to hear these stories. But for these stories to reach everyone on the Seacoast, I have a favor to ask. If you're hearing this right now, will you press the follow button on Spotify or Apple Podcasts? I promise it takes 3 seconds to do so, and it makes a huge difference. If you make that tiny sacrifice for me, I'll continue to make big sacrifices for you in my quest to bring the Seacoast just a bit closer together. Thank you so much for doing that and for being here today. I really appreciate it. Now back to today's story. I want to talk about careers because I've been very fascinated, really my whole career, my 7 years, of just what the role of work in our lives is. Is it for a job just to have something that you like doing, that you tolerate, that you're good at, that you feel like you're doing a net positive to the world and pays the bills and gives you the benefits and allows you to live a really fulfilling life outside of it? Or should your job be something that the pay and the benefits, they don't really matter that much? If it's something that gets you out of bed every day, that you were so excited to show up at, that you work with great people, that you love so much, like which is the better course? And I'm not necessarily sure there is a right answer.
Yeah, I think, I'd say it's like individual, your mileage may vary. But like I couldn't do anything that I wasn't insanely passionate about. And so I get to do 2 things. So I get to work for a tech company, which
you are very passionate about.
So I'm a curious person, getting to know somebody or know a company and their problems and trying to solve those problems is for a curious person, I don't know if I'd be able to sit behind a desk all day and look at an Excel spreadsheet. I'm interested in people, always very interested in just people and how they navigate. So getting to work with large enterprise clients and trying to figure out how that is insanely rewarding for me because I'm always curious about how something works or how is this position, what problem are we actually solving? And I feel there's definitely solving some lofty things there, but it's also just it's fun, and I enjoy that. But I also, I'm doing this thing where I'm giving back, or I feel like I'm giving back. Like, I get paid $2,000 an hour, but 1 hour a year to do the mayor gig. And it's $500 more than I get to be a city councilor. It's not enough to pay rent in Portsmouth, and it's certainly not paying a mortgage. But it's where I feel like, and was taught, that you got to pay your rent on earth. So like, that's where I feel like it'd be tough if like you don't, and not everybody gets to choose a job that they enjoy. Like everybody says like privilege is a bad thing. Like, yeah, I mean, it's a bad thing if you don't try to do something with it, I guess. But like I have the privilege to work at a good job and one that I really like. And I also have the privilege to represent 23,000 people, on a Tuesday and maybe, 100,000 in the weekend. Like that's a privilege that I try to be able to pay forward. And I had a dad and a family that like came from nothing, in Portsmouth. And they made me realize that you have to give back. Nobody makes it alone. Like you're still like, you rely on other people. We all do. And so like to give back is something that complements my other job really well. And I've been fortunate that they've been supportive of that.
How does your tech company job feel about you also being the mayor and having all your demands on your time?
I think it's always a balance in what I've said to them and what I, say here, like in Joanna, is a working mayor, that paying my mortgage has to come first. Doing something like this is maybe, if I had a meeting that conflicted, I would have had to reschedule, but Monday nights is what I actually have to do. Like that's the number one thing that I have to do as the mayor or a councilor is go to the meetings. And so everything else is just like, it's more of a sacrifice for my personal life and my family. Like they go to a lot of events because there's not a lot of free time outside of working and doing this. But they knew it coming into it. And like, it was a good, like, is there any question in like the interview process? You haven't asked me, well, you didn't ask me about like this thing that I'm the mayor. Like, are you curious how that's going to go? Like, I think not being a full-time politician gives me a perspective on like that. I'm not downplaying it. Like it's a huge honor and I'm grateful to have this honor, but it's not my city, right? Like, it's not like I'm not in charge, like, or else everybody be sending me their tax bills, like it's the people, like it's literally, and so having that I think makes me a better mayor, being able to say like, I am a member of this community. I've just been elected to represent it when we make decisions on some important things. And I think likewise for being, like maybe I have some undiagnosed ADD, like to have another, outlet, I always come back fresh and excited about like I don't know what burning out really is because I got like two things that like are treating both sides of my brain. And I don't ever get really tired of doing that. It's always like, I found that they've complemented the work that I do on both.
So why did you want to become mayor?
Oh, I don't know if I wanted to become mayor. I wanted to go on the city council. Like I ran for Congress thinking that people should understand like how Facebook makes money if they're going to represent us. Like that was like crazy. But it wasn't like, not like it wasn't even my time. Certainly wasn't my time to run for Congress. But I didn't really get like what service was. Like I thought, hey, I could do this. And so I should do this instead of being like, I'm called to do this, like, and like I might be in office. There's a difference between like service and seeking office, right? So, I just felt like, okay, this Congress thing's not like, that's not my thing, like electoral politics, but I can do this. And we were at a time when this like building was tearing apart our downtown and everybody was losing their minds on that. And I think because I'm from here, I get credit just for like that I love it, And so like I wanted to use that to say like, hey, I have to be able to add to this conversation. So I just ran for council, got on the council. Then we had COVID and all this crazy stuff happened and just ran again. And I ran again at a weird time for me only because my dad had just passed away and I loved talking politics with him. So it was a question of like, am I doing this for me or am I doing this like for like this conversation that I can't have anymore? And so it was a big kind of wake up call for me. Like I actually just enjoyed the service. And I'd say since then, since running and being elected mayor at that time, because it got the most votes, it's been more fun. Because I haven't like tried to put on like, oh, like I got to triangulate to get to this position in 5 years. No, just like I enjoy it, won't do it forever. And when you're not trying to like plan out, like, yeah, sure, you might end up spending like way more time rowing than you maybe should. But it's tough to be upset with where you end up because you get to, every time and every decision. And it's a lot easier to not get disappointed. Like if I was always living my life and the decisions that I make as a stepping stone to things that I have no control about, like maybe one day I'd do something else, but like, I don't know, like I'd have to be like It'd have to be the perfect person to be able to do that. I just stopped like thinking I'm going to like try to fit myself into like a future that may or may not include any other political office outside of this. I know I'm pretty good at doing this thing right now, and I enjoy it, and it works, and I get to do my work and job and all those things, and I get to coach football or soccer on Thursdays.
Wow,
and Saturday.
tell me you studied in England.
Yeah, I know. But the footy, but yeah. So like I'm pretty fortunate, but it just it didn't come from like I never thought of this as like a stepping stone. Like it was always just like I had a service. And once I fully embraced it, I feel like it's been a lot more enjoyable.
What do you find most gratifying about being the mayor of Portsmouth?
I can't make anything happen that doesn't happen, but sometimes like being able to do the right thing, like know the right thing. It's not always easy to know the right thing. But when you know the right thing, to also do the right thing. That's the most gratifying thing. And sometimes it's not gratifying in terms of like people helping you or like being excited by that, but being able to do the right thing and know that like Portsmouth will be at least okay in the future because of something that you've done. That's gratifying. And then like on the individual like level, when there's somebody that's like, it's not always like, because there's limited ability for us to do that. But like when somebody has a problem and you've solved that, like when you've removed a barrier in government, this is a large bureaucracy. Like even Portsmouth, we have a budget of $146 million, over 1,000 employees. It's like it's a bureaucracy. And so like being able to navigate that for somebody and saying like, and just giving them the sense that like, this is your government. Like I'm here to try to make it easier for you. Like that's insanely rewarding from a standpoint of like, I think because people expect like that it's not, that it's like that there's not people here that care. And maybe sometimes like the bureaucracy makes it seem like we don't, but we do.
You mentioned the size of the budget, and obviously the town's population swells up so much during the summer. Why is this not a full-time job?
We have a city manager. There's like somebody in charge all the time. Because we're deciding policy, right? We're not running, like I'm not running like the city. Like I get asked to do things like and speak on behalf, but like you could even ask like, why do we not have like even a direct election for mayor? Like why do we have this like popularity contest where the number one vote getter gets to be mayor? And I think that, I think in New Hampshire, there's just a desire to have like this feeling that like it's all of us, and government is not something that like it's separate. And there's limitations for that, but there's benefits too. Like I put on the mayor suit, it's not that I'm acting a role, but it's different. Like I don't take things personally. It's tough with a name like Deaglan anyways, but like I just don't take things personally. So there's a lot of benefits that like when you're a member of a community and you're asked, you put yourself out there, but you're asked to lead in some way on the council. I think knowing that it's not a full-time gig, that like you don't depend on it, I think allows you to have some, a dispassionate view of that, which I think is positive. Like I have visions and goals and things like that, but those aren't related to my employment. Like if I get voted out and we vote these bums out, including myself, some other bums get voted in, that's okay. And, it allows us to have that. And the city's, nuts and bolts are going to continue on. And that's a great thing too. Like that it's not like the policy has changed, but the operation doesn't.
Couple more questions for you, then we'll get you out of here on time. I solicited a question to my audience, and I received this one. What has been the biggest personal sacrifice you've had to make throughout your term?
I would say the time away from my family is like I try to include them, and kids are great to include in that. But like the time away, I think it's really that's the toughest thing. And I try to tell myself, and I don't know if this is just me lying to myself, but like I try to say it's important to give I'm teaching my daughters the need to give back from a public service standpoint. And that's the lesson I'm teaching them. But I think like not being there for like a bedtime or going to an event or being rushed and not present because I'm thinking about something that I have to say, like that's the toughest, like I'd say bar none, is just like how it affects the family. And I think like, my wife gets, when people will say negative things, and they're pretty easy, I think that it's tough because it doesn't like nobody, I think that if you have a conversation one-on-one, people appreciate, and people mention that all the time. I think that sometimes like in an argument or like when there's a contentious issue, it might not always start with like, hey, I appreciate, the work and you're trying to work through this. And so like she takes that maybe more personally than I do. But yeah, just spending time away from, the family and the sacrifice that is, like that's easily, like that's number one. And I just lie to myself, hopefully not, that there's some benefit that's been given to my kids, and knowing that like if you're given opportunities, you have to use your privilege to help other people and not to enrich yourself, because long term you'll be happier.
30 years from now, when you're rowing on the Piscataqua on a lovely summer morning and reflecting on your...
Right before I have a heart attack and fall in, yeah.
And you're reflecting on your time as mayor, what do you want your legacy as Portsmouth mayor to be?
I don't think that there's any... it would be that we had like a reasonable... I guess one, like I'd want to say like we actually started building like, through zoning changes, started building more housing and like started to make it more affordable. But I don't really think about, I don't think that there's any way to really, it's not like, I don't know. Like like in ways, like I don't want there to be much of a legacy at all from a standpoint of just like, it's never about like any individual that's here. Like if there's a legacy, it's that like, I always thought that like the answer was in the community somewhere and I facilitated getting it out. Like this is not about like me or my legacy. It is about the greatest place to raise a family, live, like all of these things. But that's because of the people, like the character, like sounds so trite. The character of Portsmouth is not in the buildings, it's in the people. Like there's a lot of cool people that come together to make that. I hope that if there's a legacy, it's like, this damn Deaglan guy wouldn't stop talking about how we were the answer to our own problems and like, put us in a position to try to solve them, because it's never about that one person. And it's certainly not on the council. We don't have a design to do that. And I think that, yeah, we got Portsmouth problems, but like we are the envy of a lot of people and we're very lucky. And I hope that like through this service, like I guess that would be it. That if I inspired other people to step up and engage in their community because they thought that it was worth it and that they would be able to make an impact, and that impact would also have an impact on them in a positive way. That's what I would like the legacy to be, by like being out there and crazy and doing the council stuff to convince other people that they had a voice and they can use that voice and don't have to agree with me, but just get out and say it and do something. Like I hope that I'll empowered somebody else to, who agrees with it or not, to go out there and get involved at whatever age you can make the time, because this is literally what makes a community. And we have all these people that move here. Like, get involved, get on a board, like start a podcast. But like, that's the thing that makes Portsmouth great. Like, you have to like go out and volunteer. It doesn't have to be in government, doesn't have to be, on the rec board, but get involved. And like, that's what I'd like. Haven't really thought about that question, but if I have a legacy, it's that you should get involved. And there's a lot of good things happen when people get involved. And like, if you're complaining about something, it sounds like you're volunteering to fix it. So like,
love that.
Go out and do it.
Do you have any political aspirations beyond Portsmouth?
No, I don't. I honestly, I have an aspiration to be useful. And I know that sounds like a political answer. And like, I have like no ability to tell you any differently but like, I used to plan it out. I used to have like, I'm going to do this and do that. And like my time to be helpful to either Portsmouth or the state, like, I'm not saying like this is it, because this is a lot and this is crazy and I'm very grateful of it. But there just might not be a time for me to like do something other, like my skill set might not apply to somewhere else. And so I guess I just stopped trying to think about how to force that, and just like, wherever you're planted, grow, man. Like, just like, and this is a really good thing to satiate all those feelings that I have of trying to be of service to others. And it's like, I don't know, like when you're growing up and if you go to church, I did as like a Catholic, like, when you shake your hands of your neighbors, like it's rewarding, like in and of itself. And so like, if nothing else comes from it, it will be fantastic. And I'll be very, very grateful. If there's some other challenge, but I don't know what that challenge would be at the moment. So not really looking to plot that course.
Final question for you.
Ooh.
We ask the same final question every week.
I should have
at the end
watched
of the episode.
podcast and had a really canned answer.
That's okay. What is your mission that you're on right now?
Be a good dad. Yeah, that's like my number one mission, I think, is to lead and get my daughters. Like genetics are a thing; they're a wild thing, and I think that to be able to give them examples, lessons, good advice is only good to give to other people. Like it's tough to take, but like my job is to be a good dad, and for me that means being a good example. And so I hope to be a good example to them. It's the number one thing that I do, and there'll be times when I am just overcome with joy and elation when I sit there watching, like, I was watching Blank Check, great movie, came out in 1994, and this kids movie, and just getting to watch them be happy, and I guess to be a good dad and to reflect and to realize that I'm happy. I guess that's the second. It's like to be happy and realize you're happy is a gift, and so to try to take time to realize I'm happy.
That's a wonderful mission and a great place to end. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to call you that because I still don't know how to say your name.
Yeah, listen, I feel like everybody says hi to me now that like has no idea how to say my name. Like that's the biggest difference. That's the biggest change. Hey, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you, man.
That's Deaglan McEachern, the mayor of Portsmouth. The best way to support him is to get involved in the community, to volunteer, to support local, to give something to someone who needs it. And if you're in search of ideas for how to do that, just message @Seacoast Stories on Instagram. I certainly know a lot of people who could use your help. I'm off to Miami for a quick reset, but I hope you all have a great week here on the Seacoast, enjoying lobster rolls at Ray's, picking apples at Applecrest, or having a pint at Throwback Brewery, which is quickly becoming one of my favorite spots. Until next week, everybody, live free or die.